The Honourable Peeni Henare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I support and endorse the words of my colleague who spoke on this bill before it was interrupted, and acknowledging that for Kiwis right across Aotearoa, the access to medicines is important. The access to the right medicines, however, is the most important thing. And making sure that the processes in order to get those matters, get the right framework to allow the right decisions for the right medicines to be accessed in this country are hugely important. What we know, however, though, Mr. Speaker, is we can tinker with some of the legislation, we can put something that seems like such a token gesture because it means nothing unless the funding is there to purchase those particular medicines. So we stand to make sure that when this bill goes to the committee and when it's considered and more submissions are heard on this particular bill, Mr. Speaker, we can make sure that those voices are heard to hold this government to account on their promise to delivering medicines to New Zealanders. And that's hugely important, Mr. Speaker, and we heard the speeches in the House as this particular bill was introduced, and we want to look closely at what that means with respect to the international standards that other countries place on the access to those medicines, the research to make sure that it's robust. And I wonder too, just given the nature of world affairs at the moment, Mr. Speaker, what does that actually mean? We can't deny that. We can't simply say that that country does it, so we must do it too. We must look more broadly at this particular matter. Sometimes that means not always agreeing with those that we've usually aligned ourselves with. We can't look towards international standards without making sure that we continue to hold a truly independent foreign policy, one that says we'll do what's right for New Zealanders. And we can't shortcut those matters. And this particular bill, while it might look towards greater access, we must make sure that it's robust enough to show that New Zealanders can continue to make sure that the medicines that it accesses are the right ones and won't do harm to Kiwis. Now, Mr. Speaker, we know this particular matter is one of great concern, consternation, and priority for New Zealanders. In fact, in all of my time in Parliament and every election campaign that I've entered into, health and access to medicines has been one of those topics that continues to be at the forefront of the debate wherever we go across this country. And rightly so, because it touches on an emotion that every member of this House and every New Zealander and communities around this country feel passionate about, because it affects them. It affects their families, it affects their loved ones, it affects their friends and their wider community. Which is why, Mr. Speaker, when we look towards this particular bill, we must make sure that in supporting it, as Labor does, at least for more consideration, that we continue to look at this system in its entirety, not to cut corners while trying to build a house. And that's the point we want to make on this side of the House as we look towards those regulations and making sure that Kiwis can access the medicine that they need to access. Mr. Speaker, a good man by the name of Mr. Malcolm Mulholland, who regularly contacts members from right across the House, I acknowledge the journey and the fight that he and so many others have had with our legislation, with members of this House, with governments of all hues, to make sure that Kiwis get that access. And one of the challenges with that, Mr. Speaker, is when I think of Mr. Mulholland, I think of his wife, Wikitoria. And it makes me sad when I think of her and so many others, that often when we come to this House, we hope to do more, we hope to do good things for people, and often, sometimes, legislation or other barriers, political barriers, can stand in the way, because the cost is a real cost. It's a human cost. And access to medicine is important, and I'll reiterate the point that access to the right medicines is even more important. So, Mr. Speaker, my colleague, Dr. Verrill, who has a particular interest and knowledge in this space, made clear in her contribution in the House how she looks, and the Labour Party will look towards monitoring the submissions and continuing to monitor this government on what they're promising with this particular bill. Because it's easy to get caught up in rhetoric. We saw that in the reading of the last bill. And we know that, in particular, from the member who led that, whose name was on that last bill, and who's the minister that's promoting this bill, rhetoric is actually exactly that, just rhetoric. It's got to have substance. It's got to be something that makes sure that it isn't just an empty promise to New Zealanders to build their hopes up, because we saw it from this government during the campaign. They promised all these medicines, first budget came, and realised, oops, it's actually quite an important thing to deliver on those promises. U-turn, Mr. Speaker. That's what happened. It was a U-turn. And this bill continues to make sure that those Kiwis get what they deserve, can deliver on promises that have been made throughout election campaigns, Mr. Speaker. I don't want to go on too much longer, because Dr. Verrill, in her contribution when this bill was interrupted, spoke to the specifics around some of those medicines, some of the research and some of the licenses that they've received from other countries, and the challenges that those particular medicines had through that process. And she was very clear in her critique about whether or not that suits us, and whether or not we should simply just give it the green light to enter into our market and for supply here in New Zealand. But just a final reminder for the House, Mr. Speaker, and which is why, in particular in health matters, it's one of those things where if we could remove the politics, focus on the substance here to make sure that Kiwis get what they deserve and get what they need when they need it, and the quality that they deserve in these matters, then of course we will support that. We do support it to the next process of the bill, but we will continue to interrogate it, and we encourage all of those who I know have already reached out, and the many others who want to have their say on this bill will have their voice heard. You know, I was mentioning to my colleague here, Mr. Speaker, in the reading of the last bill, about how not only did that activate on that bill, but it's activated New Zealanders right across to just submit, to actually engage in a democratic process. And I know all of us who sit on select committees are wondering, oh my gosh, on what seems like a rather benign bill or bill of little interest, Kiwis are coming out in their droves to make sure their voice is heard. And that's the strength of a democratic institution. And that's making sure that the people whose lives these decisions that we make in this House impact the most have their voice heard, Mr. Speaker. So with caution, we support this bill, and we will make sure we interrogate this throughout the entirety of the process. And of course, with that, hold the caveat that if we don't agree, we will continue to challenge and even potentially withdraw. But for now, we support it.